Welcome to Every Step Podcast. I'm Krystyna Weston.
And I'm Judith Beck.
Every Step is the podcast where career and life meet. Welcome back from all your travels, Judith. It's so nice to have you back in Australia after your nearly month away in the US, catching up with your mum and your family and having a really special celebration. Why don't you share what that celebration was about? Because I think we've got some really fun things to talk about today.
I am so glad to be back. It is a long trip, and it just went by so quickly that I can't believe that I was away that long, because I haven't really been away that long for a long time, for several years. And it was my mother's 100th birthday.
Wow.
On April 28th. Yeah, amazing. And she's amazing. I mean, it really was kind of, one of those things where you've met my mom, because she came here when she was 97. And literally, it was a week of parties. So, we went to, first night was a cocktail party she lives in a retirement village. And so she has her own apartment. She takes care of herself.
100. That's amazing.
100. She goes to exercise class. This is her routine. She goes to exercise class every morning. She meets her friends for cappuccino at 10:30. Then they go to lunch at about 11. Then they meet for cappuccino again at about 3. And then there's some function at this place called Savannah Pines. It's amazing. They have functions for them all the time. So they're always partying. And so the first night, they had their Friday cocktail hour, which was dedicated to her birthday. And they had decorations and margaritas and any drink you wanted.
Love it.
I know. And then my sister had an after party after that. And then the next night was this formal dinner with another after party. And then on Sunday, on her birthday, was the big party, which was, like over 100 some people. I was exhausted by Friday.
I'm exhausted just hearing about it. Where did she get the energy?
I was
at 100.
Exhausted. She was not exhausted at all. She was, I'll post some pictures on it, because they got her this little 100 crown and she looked so cute, and she had all her outfits all sorted out for the different functions. And then there was a lunch with the daughters on Tuesday. And seriously, I'd watched her and I thought, where the heck do you get that energy? And and what's the secret?
Yeah.
What's the secret sauce?
Yeah. So why don't we have a little bit of a chat about what we've learned from our mums? Because I think there's an awful lot that you and I have been chatting off air for months and years about the lessons that we've learned from our mums. And I think for both of us, they played a really important and pivotal role in how we are today, basically. And I continue to learn from my mum. I continue to learn things. So, why don't I kick off one of the themes, because I think one of those themes you and I both have in common in terms of our mums. One of the things I've learned from my mum, and I guess my father's passed away, but my dad as well, but it was probably more my mum driving it, is entrepreneurship.
Yes, absolutely.
My mum was an entrepreneur. She probably wouldn't label herself that, but she is. And I know you've got some amazing stories about what your mum did growing up.
Well, my dad lost his job at 40. And so my mom had 6 kids and had to go to work. And so I watched her go to work and build a business. And she worked till she was 82. And my dad ended up working for her. So, I watched her pulling it together, doing what she needed to do. And, I remember that, that when the Queen was alive, I remember they used to have that thing, never complain, never explain. And and she comes from the same era where they didn't complain about anything. They just did.
Yeah.
And they're still doing. And it's like, I watched her do that. I watched her think, okay, well, what is necessary? And I think, they call them the silent generation.
Yeah.
That era. And when I was, because I'm doing that book on her for
Yeah,
her
yeah.
for her 100th, and so I had to interview her. I've been interviewing her for the last year and finding out things that I didn't know about. And like at high school, for instance, all the boys, Pearl Harbor hit, and all the boys that were like 17 and 18 in high school with her at the time, they were all signing up to go to the war.
Mm.
So she had boyfriends that were going uh, overseas, and then or going to training or whatever. And so then and then she met my dad, and he was like 19, and he was being sent over to Europe. And it was funny because when I was over there, I found all the letters.
Oh, wow.
Oh my God. And I copied them all, and the letters to, my dad was sending to my mom. And it's so cute. It's so cute how they talked, hi, darling, and my sweetheart. And it's like,
Oh,
it literally is. It's like an old-fashioned movie. And
beautiful.
beautiful cards. Because he was in training in Tennessee, and he's like, "When are you coming to see me? My heart will be broken." Can you imagine the boys talking to the girls like that today?
Oh, don't forget that was way, way, way before, WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, you name it. Like that was
Exactly.
the old-fashioned way of courting. There was no such thing as online dating. There was
No.
nothing.
It was beautiful. And it was beautiful to read those letters, but also you could also read in there the worry,
Mm,
because you don't know if someone's going to come back.
that's
And
right.
then this is your fiance, and you're thinking, and then when he did come back, they on a furlough, they got married. And then they had a honeymoon where, they went to it was called the Cornhusker Hotel at the time, at a football game between Air Force and the Army. And that was their honeymoon. And then off he had to go back to the war. And you just sort of go, wow. And they just all took it in their stride,
Yeah.
and did what they needed to do. And
It's missing from today, isn't it? That we're all a bunch of whingers.
yeah, and they didn't complain, and the resilience was very strong.
Mm.
And then even when he came back from when the war was over, that's where you start your family, and you start working, and putting your kids through school and things like that. So I think the thing from her is, I um like your mom, entrepreneurship, just get in there and do it. And whether it's out of necessity or passion. I mean, in her case, it was out of necessity.
Well, I think it is for a lot of us, right? No matter what generation.
Yeah, yeah. Well, but sometimes entrepreneurship comes because you're passionate about
Well,
something.
that's true. Yeah. Yeah.
But in her case, it was a necessity, then turned into, this is what I want to do, and this is what I like. And she could see that, like I also learned that she was in top 10 in her class, and was offered a scholarship, but her father um, uh, talked to her, said, didn't want her to go on to college, wanted her to go to secretarial school.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then you've got this thing of like, geez, what could have she become?
Well, yeah.
Been
Yeah.
CEO. She would have, but she did later on, but not until her in her 40s. You
Yeah,
know,
very, very, very similar. My parents were the product of war. My heritage is Polish. So my mother, as a very young child, was with her mother in Warsaw, taken away during the Polish sort of uprising period and the early part of the war, and they found their way in a series of labor camps throughout Europe. And the long story short, the war kind of ends. They get taken in by the Red Cross into England, and there's this whole Polish camp. It's basically everybody thought that one day or soon they would all, Warsaw would be fixed and they'd all go back to Warsaw and start their lives again. But this camp, effectively refugee camp or Red Cross camp, became an institutionalized kind of camp, and it was for more than a decade where they had schools and everything there. You know, everything was very, very centric, and no one really learnt English. So there came a point in time and the government said, look, we're closing the camp down now. It's done its thing. We're closing it down now. My mother's English skills weren't that great. And she was having to sit her O levels or A levels or whatever it was at the time without a command of the English language. So she didn't do as well as she could have. So, you know, similar to your mother. So my mother ended up going to secretarial college, and she improved her English skills, obviously. And if you speak to my mum now, you would never know she was European. She has no accent whatsoever. But this whole concept, imagine if they had had the educational opportunity and had, like my mother often says to me, gosh, if I'd have had your opportunities, if I'd have gone to university like you did, I'm wondering what I could have done. But very similar to your mum, you know, mum went through secretarial college, became an EA, but then she had a whole bunch of other things that she wanted to do. So she went into retail, similar to your mum. My parents had a wools, fabrics, haberdashery school uniform business for many years and opened up a number of stores and did very well. And then sold that. And then my mother retrained again. And she got another diploma and another skill set, and she had her own training business and had her own training business, and she was a TAFE teacher in business studies and accounting. So my mother had probably three different careers during her life, or she's still alive, you know, secretarial, having retail, very entrepreneurial, then having her own business in a training business, and then as a TAFE teacher. Like, that's a lot of changes. And you realize that you're never too late, because mum was probably in her 40s when she completely retrained. So you're never too late to get a new diploma or a new degree or a new skill. It's never too late to change industries. And you can change industries and be successful. I think it's a very similar story, different narrative, but similar story to your mum.
Absolutely. And how old is your mom?
She's 81, about to turn 81.
81. So it's
20 years younger, right? 20 years younger than your mum.
Yeah. And it's funny because it's almost like 100 is the new 80. At this place in Savannah Pines, there was these other people that had turned 100. One was 104. And there was a couple of them that were getting ready to turn 100. And I'm going, what the heck's going on over here? What are you people eating? What are you doing over here? But it was, I would recommend to people who are listening that if you're a grandmother or your parents or an uncle or whoever who are older, find out their story.
Absolutely.
It's a leveler, and it is something where you just kind of go, if you think your life is bad or whatever, and you start listening to these people's stories of things that they experienced, you'll have a different take on your own life. And it also will be an inspiration for you to go, what have I got to lose? If they could do it, I can do it. And it's never too late to change.
Never too late to change.
To make if you're in a situation that you don't like, it's never too late to get out of it. There's always support out there for you. And I think that, looking at all the people that I met in the last month, because I got to reconnect with uncles like my uncle, her brother, he's like 82, and she literally brought him up because her mother, my grandmother, Ida Grace, had rheumatoid arthritis most of her life. So my mom, after school at 14, she'd have to come home and take care of her mother as well. And literally,
that's a lot of work for a young child, a lot of responsibility.
That's right. Be the mother to her little brother, and as well, and help around and do things like that. So, and then her mother was always very didn't want, protective, like, don't go outside, don't do this, it was always worried about her. So because of that, then my mother was very like, go out, ride your bikes, do this, do that. She didn't want us to have the same experience that she had, even though she had a lovely home life, how she tells it, it's still there were those limitations that did hold her back. So then she bring that out to us and go do this, go do that. And, I think listening to people, older people, I know they have programs where people can go to retirement homes, the young ones, they send them into retirement homes, and they pair them with someone in grade school or high school to learn. And I think those are wonderful programs because that experience is just priceless. My mother, one thing I noticed with her is that she never takes sides. So with 6 kids, she never would take sides. And even
have you learned that? Have you adopted that as part of your?
It is, yes, probably in more of a work point of view, as far as like, okay, tell me your story. Now tell me your story. Okay, now how can I get both of you together? And one just wants this and the other. So you learn to be a negotiator. And that I think is
and a mediator,
and a mediator. So she's always been a mediator. She doesn't have favorites. She doesn't, no one ever feels like she likes one more than the other. She's always treated us differently because we are different. Like the 6 of us are so different. And so, we never felt like, we weren't good enough kind of thing. And she never yelled. I've never heard her yell.
And that's really interesting. I had a similar experience. Obviously I got in trouble as a kid, but the way my mother dealt with things that I wasn't doing well was to sit me down and to have a quiet conversation with me about it. Oh my God, that was so much worse than getting a smack, or, this was the days, like I think I only got a smack once in my life. I might have been 2 or something. But it was almost like the fact that she would sit me down and have a conversation. She actually developed my conscience. And I used to hate those conversations because I would feel so bad. So she would never yell at me. She'd just sit me down. And that had a massive impact on me. Massive.
That is brilliant, because that is like, my mom would go say things like, wait till your dad gets home. So my dad would be the one that would yell, and we would get in trouble. But she wouldn't do it. But my grandmother, on the other hand, she was the one, like your mother, that would say things like, I'm really disappointed in you.
Yeah.
I had higher hopes for you.
I know, it's awful.
I thought you knew better than that. I mean, I think that way is so much more powerful than putting them in the corner or whatever they do these days, is really just saying, really, I thought you were better than that. And I guess only certain people can get away with, certain personalities.
Yeah, I was just about to say it worked for me, but I'm not sure it would work for everybody. That whole sitting you down and,
well, certain people have to do it, right? So, I think the child, one has to really respect the person who's saying that. So there has to be already that level of respect.
So respect, that's another word that I've learned from my mother.
Level of respect. And and speaking of respect, I just got to, before I forget this. So on the way back, we went to Japan. I'm telling you, and my husband saw this too. Seriously, there were kids everywhere in this one particular place that we were at, and not a peep out of them. it was like cute kid city. Like nobody was screaming and yelling. They all were like having fun. Their parents, I was like, where are we? Like, are we in an alternate universe or something? Because all these kids are so respectful, and they're not yelling. They're not. And then we get on this tour. And of course, the tour had a lot of Westerner kids. Now, I don't want to be getting, comments in. This is my view. All right.
Your perspective.
They were yelling, screaming, running around, tearing the hair out, and all
That's
the
culture.
oh,
That's
it's
part of the
culture.
culture.
And I'm thinking, what, like these kids, and everywhere we would go, they would bow. They would, even when we were checking in, we went Japan Airlines. In the morning, we were the first ones in line. In the morning, we'd get there, and they'd have their team meeting, and they bowed to each other. Then they all got in front of their station, and they bowed to the people that were in line, like, thank you for
Yeah.
coming. And I'm like going, this is a customer service thing here. And
Absolutely. I think this whole respect piece, and Judith, you and I have talked about this a lot, and we've talked about it in other podcasts. I think it's really important, and it feels to me, and maybe it's just my lived experience recently, that this piece of respect seems to have dropped in importance or has disappeared. Like, I grew up and I learned to be respectful. I didn't necessarily, and I don't necessarily have to agree with you, but I need to be respectful. Whereas there seems to me that other generations and younger generations coming through, they don't have the same respect for seniority. They don't have the same respect for wisdom. It's the me, me, me. It's about me, and it's about what I want, and it's about instant gratification, not delayed. Oh, that's another thing I learned from my mum, delayed gratification. And all these really important and subtle skills seem to be missing. And as a result, we don't listen to other people's perspectives. We
that's
don't listen to the alternative view. It's just all about us.
absolutely. I totally agree. And it's a shame. And I don't know what, and I know that when I came back, I saw that there was, I think it's the minister in South Australia that went to Washington because he's trying to get social media banned for kids under 14, and then parental guidance from 14 to 16. And I thought to myself, that's a great idea, because, they're not going to learn respect and everything else by
They're
looking
not.
at
And it's
their devices all day long.
and it's even worse when you're away. I'm not sure if you saw this. There was a news article, and this was horrendous for me to read, that there are parents sponsoring their over 14-year-old daughters to have OnlyFans accounts.
Oh my God. Oh my
And there's
God.
nothing wrong with it, apparently,
Oh
because
my God.
it's with parental supervision. So parents are enabling.
That's
It
child
just
abuse as
makes
far as
me
I'm concerned.
feel so unwell.
That is, I'm telling you, if anybody thinks OnlyFans is empowering, no, it's not empowering. If you got an OnlyFans account and you're selling yourself online,
If you're an adult, do whatever you want, right?
it's not empowering.
Gee, not
But don't
children.
but don't be misguided that that is not a form of prostitution, because if you're selling your body, whether it's online for money, subscribers, whatever, that's what it is. You could call it whatever, different levels, but that is not empowering. That is not using your brain. You might be making some short-term money, but for what cost? Anyway, I shouldn't be preaching.
Anyway, let's get back to, but
To each their own, but
I
that's
mean,
my
but this
view.
is the whole, things have really shifted, and our parents didn't have, our mothers didn't have the internet, they didn't have mobile phones, they didn't have social media, and we spent more time talking about, learning about self-respect, and there wasn't that whole bullying online culture. I mean, we had bullying at school, of course we did, but we were talking about it differently because it wasn't all hidden. Like, because when kids get bullied now, or when things happen now, often the parents don't know what's going on.
Yeah, it's online. Well, I did see on the news the other day that Australia was number 2 in bullying.
Yeah, it's awful.
That is horrible. And I'm thinking, how's that possible with all this supposedly education that kids are given at school and everywhere? Well, about the downfalls of bullying, that you shouldn't do it, that this is and it's almost like it's increased.
Mm.
And when I was away, I didn't watch any news, didn't watch any TV. I didn't have time. I didn't get on social media. And guess what? The world didn't end.
Yeah.
And guess what? I slept better than I've ever slept.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. So
You know,
that kind of brings me to another thing that I learned from my mum, because when you're not on social media and all of those things, you're actually connecting with people. And one of the things I've learned from my family and from my mum is that importance of family and importance of ritual and that importance of connection and conversation and laughter and in the real world.
oh,
And
absolutely, absolutely.
when you're not on devices, you can actually have real connections.
Well, I got to connect with my nieces and nephews that I haven't seen for 15 years. And, they're all in their late 20s and early 30s. One's an engineer, one's a tech, he's pretty much a tech genius. And the other one is a senior person in financial. And they're so bright and smart. And the other one is a veterinarian surgeon and has their own practice in England. And I'm like going, wow, they're all in that age range and they're just so bright and smart. And how great to be able to have this face-to-face contact with them and listen to them. And that does make you feel good about the future when you do get to see. So something's going right, but what's going wrong with new generations? I hope that, I hope that people will start thinking about what's working and what's not working.
Yeah. The pendulum needs to come back a little bit. It's gone a little bit too far.
A happy balance. And the other thing is with my mom, like everybody over it, because of all these parties and out there, everybody was getting sick. They were all coughing, getting colds, this, that, and the other thing. She didn't get sick. She didn't get sick once. And I said, and like we'd go over to the retirement village, we could hear people coughing and everything. She was fine. And I'm going, why haven't you got? She goes, I take echinacea and vitamin C every day.
Bless.
So
see, she looks after herself. And I think that's another thing, right? That's another thing. She looks after her health. She puts her health as a high priority. And that's important.
And you know what I noticed too? Every day, every morning, she still gets up, does her hair, does her makeup, dresses nicely for the day. Like she does not, sort of sit around and she's up and at 'em, that kind of up and at 'em kind of thing. And I think that keeping your mind active, keeping your brain active, however it may be, is really important. And socialization.
Really important.
There were people that were just opening the door because what happens is that these apartments are internal. So there's a hallway and you have your own little door entryway and things like that. And very safe. But there'd be friends of hers that would just open up the door. Millie, you okay? Is it all right? So they're looking after each other.
Look out for each other. So look out for your family, look out for your friends.
Exactly. If you haven't heard them. So I guess the moral of the story is there's so much that can be learned from the older generations and not to let that knowledge, like with this book that I've been doing with her for the last year, it really is a historical book it's not for public, I'm not publishing it or anything, but it's for the nieces and the nephews and so on and so on and so on, because they would not have known half the things that are in that book about
and they get lost in history. My mother's in the process of writing family history as well. And the stuff that you've learned, the stuff that my mother has uncovered, because she's doing some ancestry and doing research at the same time, that would be lost forever. Like that's an enormous amount of work to document all of those things.
And
if somebody wasn't doing it, if you didn't do it, that would be lost to your future generations.
I know. But, even after doing that, I probably shouldn't say this online, but I will. Do you know there were still a couple people in the family that are annoyed that I'm doing that book?
Oh, they're jealous.
Well,
Whatever.
it's because they think I'm doing a memorial book. And it's a birthday book that my mom is actually supporting and being involved in. But this is where misperceptions can happen, and where I see in families that communication is
Oh,
so
yeah.
important, that if you don't, if you think something, just confront the person and ask the question. That
I
just,
I couldn't agree with you more. If you have a beef with a family member, sit down and talk about it.
talk
Don't
about it.
don't send emails, don't send texts, don't gaslight them, don't block them.
Oh,
Sit down and have an open and honest conversation and be prepared to understand the person's intention, because sometimes we all do stuff that lands on people in a way that was unintended. But if you read for intention, often the intention's not there.
yeah.
There's no intent to be malicious. There was
No,
no intent to hurt. But
no.
sometimes people forget about reading for intention and they just read for that one thing. And
Yeah.
history gets wiped. All the amazing things that you've done and that all the things that have happened get wiped. History gets rewritten, and it's World War III.
And and that's why it's better to write the history while the people are here, to make sure it's accurate
Mm,
and get them involved. That's why, grandma and grandpas and aunts and uncles who are around, asking them questions to verify things. There was my mom's father. I remember years ago, someone took a video, but we can't find the video because they don't. The person who has the video doesn't know what they did, unfortunately. But what it
yeah.
was the story of his mother and father. One was from a wealthy family, one from a poor family, living in Europe. They didn't. The family wasn't happy, so the poor one stowed away on the ship to come over to America. So it
Beautiful.
was that kind of a, like, well, we've got to run away because our families aren't happy about it. And like that kind of a story, you want to write down.
Oh, absolutely.
You want to write,
Absolutely. Yeah,
you
we've got
want
some fascinating history that's come out, and people that have changed their names and pretended to have other religions because of this is sort of 2, 3 generations ago, because of persecution that was going on at the time. And you listen to those stories and you look at what's happening today, and there's so many parallels. It's so frightening that there continues to be this hatred.
I know. I know. And you said that your mom had to learn the language.
Yeah.
And that's not easy to do at the end of the day. Anybody who's tried to um, perfect another
Yeah,
language will
14,
know how hard.
15, 14, 15 years of age, having to sit exams, and she didn't have command of the English language.
That is unbelievable. When I was running my search business, we'd get applications in from all over the world type thing, and we'd get ones that were either from Chinese or Japanese or European, and they'd come in, and I remember some of the consultants, they'd be reading it and there'd be misspelling
Mhm.
words on it. And I remember going to this one consultant one time to say, how many languages do you know? This is a person, like, really, this is a person from another country who's done a hell of a good job on the application. And so what that they got a couple words wrong? Obviously, Japanese or Chinese or whatever it was, I can't remember at the time. What is their first language? They've learned English pretty good. And it always makes me mad when I hear people make fun of people who are trying to speak
Mm,
English, and they're doing a pretty good job of it, but
mm.
they might have missed another word. You think, you know what? Yeah. How many do you know?
Yeah,
The answer
exactly.
would be the answer would be zero.
Exactly.
The answer would be
Exactly.
0. And you kind of go, well, now you can use translators. I mean,
Well,
that it was,
it's a lot easier now.
yeah, they use the translators. But so I guess the moral of our story today is don't let the history go, because there's beautiful things that you will gain from listening to people who have wonderful experiences, who have gone through hardship and come through them on the other side.
Big
And
hardship. Big
big
hardship.
hardship, big hardship, and have taken it in their stride and are still positive, still have a positive attitude,
A
that's
positive, can-do attitude, still continuous learning, even in their, 80s and in their hundreds, still interested, still participating in community, still looking after their health. Like, hello.
that's exactly. So, the only things that I've ever heard my mother complain about is food and politics. Right? Like it's too salty, it's not salty, it's too sweet, it's not sweet, or politics, and I won't even get
If
into
that's
that.
as bad as it gets, you know what? Life isn't
I
too
know.
bad.
Exactly. Well, it just goes to show you got to have an outlet somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't take it out on people, take it out on other things.
Take it out on the small stuff.
On the small stuff or the big stuff that
It
you
doesn't
can't.
matter.
Doesn't matter. Exactly. Oh, great conversation today. And
Yeah. Just a big
we
shout out to my mum. I
big
love
shout
you
out to my
so
mom.
much.
Love you, love you. You've done so much, and thank you. And all the moms out there, and all the grandmothers, and all the aunts and big sisters, everybody who is a influencer to the next generations.
Big shout out and big kisses to all of you.
Yes.
For more information about Every Step and our guests, head to everysteppodcast.com. To be notified of new podcasts, please subscribe via your favourite listening platform. And of course, follow us on social media and direct message us to share your ideas about guests or topics.